Angel Rodriguez. Today's guest is the founder and executive director of Avenues for Justice, a nonprofit that has been working for decades to help disadvantaged youth in New York City avoid harsh criminal penalties and build successful, constructive lives. He'll share insights about his work and his superpower. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe. Welcome to the Superpowers for Good show, where we empower you. Angel, thank you so much for joining me today. It's such an honor for us to connect with you.
Thank you so much, and good morning, and thanks for the opportunity to be able to communicate the message of what this particular organization, Avenues for Justice, is doing for the city for 4 decades.
Well, it's important, incredibly important work that you're doing, helping kids, young adults avoid jail and get them kind of on right back into roles as contributing citizens rather than in trouble with the law or in jail. So it's incredibly important work. You've been doing this personally for a long time. How long have you been there at Avenues for Justice?
I happen to be the executive director of the organization and also a co-founder. This organization goes back to the mid 70s when I started this work. I started to look at some of the problems that were happening in our city. In the 70s, I think everyone knows that this city was pretty poor and burned out, especially our poorest communities. And I come from the Lower East Side, where I'm homegrown, and I have lived there through this duration of this organization because I thought it was super important for me to be with the people that we represent. And we started this organization. We named it Andrew Glover, which is named after a slain police officer who cared about the kids and the mission that we were kind of addressing at a time when, again, the Lower East Side, which is what I relate to most, was devastated. People were not coming into that community unless you lived there, or there would be serious consequences. There were enormous arrests in that community behind, I don't know, the community goes back to Operation Pressure Point and the Rockefeller laws, which impacted the lives of so many people in our poorest communities and communities of color, which is where these operations took place, sadly. And as everyone knows, when Rockefeller laws, police would come in and take everybody from the children to the wife to the husband, who might have been the drug dealer, and there was no discretion, and it destroyed so many lives. Operation Pressure Point, again, because of the drug issue, the police department take these operations into these poorest communities, which I hope that it's to protect them, but it's also the communities where we know there's a lot of arrests can be made. And even acting in concert, our kids, a lot of kids are arrested in the city in what's called acting in concert, which means that it could be any kid who's hanging out with two other kids who may be up to no good and do something dumb. As a friend, the third kid stays, or even the second kid stays, the three of them will get arrested and charged with the same crime, whether it's a robbery, possession of a gun, a drug sale. And that brings too many young people into our system. And that's what myself and my predecessor, Robert Siegel, responded to. And a kid got arrested and asked us to come to court with him because he was scared. And Robert and I, at the time, in sneakers and jeans, appeared in our Raymond's and in front of the rail of the judge, who then says, "Who are these guys in front of my rail?" And the kid explained it was my tutor and my mentor. And we decided to come back with another report on those kids, which created a concept of a serious need. And that created the Andrew Glover Youth Program, uh, focused in community-based programming, which we're big on, and it's our base and potentially our source that makes this organization work, and how we work with not only these young people but families. And when I say young people, we're focused on kids 13 through 24, which is a very serious population that we're engaged with, and trying to, again, change their lives. Of course, we get involved in these cases from exemption. Sometimes the parents will come to us or to one of the counselors and say, a police officer came to my house looking for my child. And we then will contact that officer and create a surrender if we needed to do that, if they're looking for him on an open, what's called 61, police complaint. And then, of course, we appear at the arraignment and communicate to the court that if we can bring this young man to the police to surrender, I think we can bring him back to court, which is the issue of bail. And as you know, bail is very different today than it's ever been. I've been doing this since for the last 40 years, easy. And in the beginning of this organization, we dealt with some of the toughest judges in the system. And as you guys know, every 20 years, there's a big turnover of a lot of people in our system, and many of them are judges. And Judge Roughwax, who was a very powerful judge here, was my mentor, but was not the kind of judge that was ready to entertain kids. And that I say that because when I was started this work, an incident happened in a city where a 14-year-old put his hand in his pocket and told somebody he had a gun to give him his money. The city went outraged. It was a political year, and from that, we developed what's called the youth part that prosecutes 13-year-olds for murder, 14 and 15-year-olds as adults. These 14 and 15-year-olds do not go to family court. They get indicted by a adult grand jury, and they would go before any judges. And like I said, Judge Roughwax and many other judges were not equipped to deal with kids. Think about it. I think that the community that I'm talking to probably has a lot of 14-year-olds at home. So think about your 14-year-old being in front of a judge facing state prison time and a felony conviction. That either you go to trial or you take a plea, and anything can happen from that. And Avenue for Andrew Glover Youth Program, and I'm going to also tell you that we are known as Avenue for Justice today behind the branding. But Avenue for Justice became very active with Judge Michael Corriero to lobby 30 years ago to create a youth part so that these young people indicted under this law would not just go before any judge. And it took a lot of work going before bar associations and court administrations to get them to understand that these are kids and we need to treat them as kids, even though we are indicting them as adults. So that part was created and has done amazing things. As everyone knows, today it's a national part. Every state has a youth part. Every state deals very differently connected to the law. So, so I've been at this for 40 years in the Lower East Side as a community-based program that enabled us to focus on the family. So we meet a 17-year-old charged with a robbery or some kind of felony charge. My workers will go to the house. My court advocates will go and make home visits to see where these kids. I always like to see where kid sleeps because it tells me a lot about and when my counselors go to that home, they find that there are other kids at home that are not doing anything or that should be in school or that have other issues. My staff will get involved because I believe that if you don't take care holistically the whole family, it falls apart. So we engage with the family the best that we can, and the best work that we do is when family engages. There are some kids today, sadly, that have no family that are living in the city on their own through shelters and other means of jumping from place to place. I was able in the late 70s to take a building away from drug dealers, understanding that I needed a safe space for these kids to take them off the street where they naturally were because I grew up in the projects. I hung out with my friends because my parents could not send me on a vacation. We didn't do vacations. So my free time was really downstairs playing around. And around me, there were friends of mine that might have been dealing drugs, that might have been doing the wrong things, but they were my friends. And that's how a lot of kids fall into the system. They talking to this kid who may have a bundle of drugs on him and the cop is watching, and before you know it, we're both arrested, now charged with acting in concert. And sadly, some of the police premise is let the system decide and figure it out. When I say the system, I talk about prosecutors traditionally that have to deal with these complaints as they come in, and also judges who have a say. when they understand the case and see that this other individual perhaps had nothing to do with it. It's about always trying to adjudicate. We're always trying to, if we're working with kids under the age of 18, we know that on a first felony, we can, depending on the case, of course, get them adjudicated. And that is very important, even on misdemeanors, because a lot of our kids suffer a lot of these situations, as I call them, early in their lives. And these records, especially today, stay in their records forever. Anybody can press one button and they come up. And you should see the faces of some of these young people who have gone through us, through the system, who have come out on the other side, who have been adjudicated, who are doing the right things, who apply for this great job that they're so happy with. And 2 weeks later, they do a check and they wind up firing these young people. And then what happens to that young person? What is he going through and processing, thinking about? He's trying to do the right thing and they won't let them. So our counselors are always through a lot of workshops addressing employment, addressing education. That's a big to do. Today we do a lot online, which enables us to communicate with a lot of kids. So I was able to get that building from these folks. I fought the city for about 4 years. I somehow maneuvered a $25 a month lease to a abandoned property. And when I wanted to buy it at a fair market value from the city, they were kind of, we don't know if we want to sell it. And I reminded them that I had this lease that I could pay $25 forever. And at the time, Carol Bellamy, who was in office, and Andrew Stein, who were in office, who understood the work that I was doing. And I was one of the first ATIs, without knowing that, in the city, providing this amazing service that they understood. And they helped me. Uh, I was able to buy this building very inexpensively, and through some of our friends and a board, I was able to gut the building, pay for it, gut it, and have kids in it in 6 months. And that building has been, if you go there today, it stands as the day that I built it, because generations have gone through that building and they take care of it. It's amazing, and you have to see it to believe it.
Yeah.
We also about in 1999 there was a need because Harlem, which was a community in East Harlem, that was also feeding a lot of people into the system. And as you guys know, any case that happens in Manhattan goes into Manhattan's courts. And again, we're like different cities. Thing happens in the Bronx goes to the Bronx. So I expanded and replicated the program in Harlem, and I have a place in Harlem, another center in Harlem. That center we rent, which is not easy, but we developed it into a beautiful place for kids to come in and be safe, with a lot of computers and a lot of counseling and a lot of workshops, food, and again a safe space for a kid to come and spend time in, without having to be in danger, sadly, in a city. We're always trying to get kids back into education, which is not easy. A lot of our kids, there's a lot of special education, there's a lot of IPs and issues that bring our kids down. I dealt with an issue just yesterday with a young man who went to school with an instrument that he took away from a 7-year old. He's walking 7-year old brother to school, and he noticed that he had this tool on him, and this tool can be opened up into like a little knife and different things. It's a utility tool. So he took it from the kid, put it in his pockets, and got him to school, and then went to school with the tool in his pocket. He went to the nurse, and the nurse is asking, "What do you have in your pocket?" The kid says nothing. So of course it's bulgy, something is there. So they called security, and before you know it, they got this kid now suspended, put out of school. I get to talk to the principal, and as it turns out, at first they called it one of the top weapons, and I go, top weapon is a loaded gun. This is a utility tool. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it was poor judgment from the young man. But I'm happy to say that the school understood that and are willing to again recover the situation and the suspension. And but that's the work. So my counselors went to meet with the principal, and that also leads to us doing a presentation for this principal, hopefully, because they have a lot of young people that are caught up in crisis. And I will tell you why we go to those schools. not just to deal with the young man or young woman that may have a legal matter, but we do prevention so that when you walk into our centers, you'll see 20 kids and potentially 15 of them will have a court matter and a court related, and the other five are not. And they will participate in every activity. No one knows who's who, and they participate in the same services. So, because we believe that prevention in this population and this age is very important. So,
And
we,
it's pretty effective, right? Your data shows that the young people you work with rarely end up in trouble again, right?
that's correct. And that's attributed to the counselors and the community based aspect of this organization. And yeah, we've been able to, once kids get involved with us and understand the process, they make efforts to stay out of the system. And the preventive kids don't go into the system. That's what's really great. And there's a lot of work from the counselors on those kids, just as there's a lot of work done with the offenders from a different perspective, because there's a
Yeah,
lot more responsibility and duties and different things. So we have kids who, we have employed, they could be in school. We have a lot of kids in treatment, drug programs. We're dealing with mental health. We don't do mental health, but it is an issue that
sure.
almost impacts every single case that we work on from different perspectives, some more
And
than others.
you've helped thousands and thousands of kids over the years. You've got hundreds in the program right now, right?
I've been fortunate, I say, to be in a position to touch the lives of so many kids, and to have an input in the criminal justice system. This organization is rooted here so that judges know who we are, prosecutors know who we are, the DA knows who we are. I was involved with the memo for the DA addressing juveniles because, again, behind the concept that these kids, these young 14 and 15-year-olds, even 16-year-olds, would be better served in family court where they have services than a youth part who has no services for them other than the ATI programs like ours, Avenue for Justice, and others who come in to provide service at a point where sometimes, it could be too late with some of these kids. So that prevention is crucial. We work with about 400 kids a year, coming on and coming off, many under supervision, and many with open matters and a lot of prevention. And of course, you know, um, the issue of COVID impacted criminal justice, still is and has, and our communities. And so, bringing people back and getting people back into a normal routine is something that we're doing now, trying to again get these young people to start committing and to start, realizing that our centers are open and that they can come in. And of course, we are try to address COVID with them and protect them the best way that we can.
Yeah.
I just had a case in court that I was a little bit concerned because the DA was taking a position that a kid to go into a program had to be vaccinated. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is not an issue of law. And, you can't put somebody in jail because he refuses to vaccinate. Not that he was going to jail. And as it turned out, it was going into we want to make sure that the referral program that he went into would accept the kid without a vaccination in order to complete a particular a package that we're working on this case where it's conditional, where the kid at the end would be adjudicated if he complies and completes. And so far, he's doing 100%. And, today the mother said to me, I can't believe that a prosecutor in New York was so nice. So I was huddling in the hallway and I was with the attorney, I was with a social worker from the DA's office and the prosecutor who was, because we were saying, we're not ready to today for this contract because we believe that there's a problem here legally. And the problem was that this kid is a juvenile. Therefore, the time that he would do upon a mess up, let's say, on his contract would be different than what they put on for an adult.
Yeah.
So that's how thorough we like to be. And that differs us from many other ATIs. And there are others in the city, large ones and small ones. And what differs us is that we are very much involved, not just in providing the service for the kid, but I'm in the conversations with the negotiations. of how this could look and what this kid needs to do to earn his probation and a non-jail sentence, because we believe
Yeah.
that service will always be better than sales.
Yeah.
And we're
Sure.
spending $500,000 a person at Rikers Island for 1 year, which is a little bit outrageous, given that we don't have money to do anything else. Though we are building jails. We That same kid that would be in Rikers Island for 1 year or in some state prison lost, we can service and make this kid productive for $5,700.
Yeah.
That's the difference, that I
It's a
think the community
hundredfold.
hopefully can understand the kind of money that we're spending and the kind of services that we're not giving. Even at state prisons, even though today there are some that are trying to educate, which I think is the way to go. Not punishment, not to put kids in solitary confinement, but to provide education so that when they come out, they can live better lives
Yeah.
and help their families, because all these young people have families. And as you well know, and the community knows that, our prisons can be anywhere from an hour and a half away to 8 hours. So think about a poor young person that lives with a grandmother who they'll never see him
Yeah.
because no way can she afford or no way can she even make that trip.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
and that impacts how that person might behave when he comes back, and that's an issue of concern. So again, Devin, have been focused through the years, and a lot of people have tried to divert me, but I stayed focused on what I think is super important, crucial to address kids coming into the system, being arrested, keeping them from being arrested sometimes, because you're there. And if
Right.
they are arrested, to make sure that they're released, to make sure now that the system starts to deal with them fairly. If they're innocent, then we go to trial. I don't do a lot of trials,
Yeah. Yeah.
sadly, because our children, our young people, are afraid of the system. They believe that the system is not fair to them and they don't trust it to the degree. And that's part of what we do, is sensitizing these young people that the system does what they need to do sometimes, but they're not out here just to get you. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
try to communicate that message. When I was, like I said, huddled this morning with this family, the parents said, I can't believe how that a prosecutor in New York would be that nice to
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
son, who's here
Well,
charged with a
you've
crime.
really yeah, you've really accomplished a lot. You've helped thousands of kids. Some of them, I'm sure, their lives have really literally been saved by the work that you're doing. Certainly, years and years, thousands of years of prison time has been avoided because of the work that you've been doing. What do you see as your superpower?
Um, I don't look at it as a superpower. I look at it as like I said earlier, that I've been blessed because I've been able to do things for people that it could not be done. I don't think by anybody else, given the time and what was going on. Uh, I can begin to tell you stories of the role that we play, from, a call from a police officer to help because they tracked down a stolen bedroom set into the community to a family that's a good family, but they bought stolen property. So my job was to go in and talk to these people and say, look, guys, you made a mistake and the property has to be given up. And from again, keeping young people from that have been facing so much jail, and we're able to prove, because here, there's the proof of the pudding. When a kid is charged with a crime, it takes a long time, and it may be a good kid who will never be involved in that again, but he is held to a standard that is tough. And I understand that. So my power is to be in the midst of all that and to create a team that has the power to communicate with the community, with the police department, with the DA's office, with judges, and anybody in between. And as you know, there are a lot of players in all that we do, including, I don't do this alone, and I have a great board of directors that help fund this organization. I started out always in the red with $20,000, and today we are a $2 million organization, which is kind of scary because I have to raise it every year privately. I
Yeah, yeah,
I have not sold this program to the government. The government, I think, who's needed a lot of help, has finally recognized Advocate Justice and who we are and the work that we've been doing, which has been a great thing that has led to some funding through the mayor's office and some other means.
yeah,
But
yeah,
my funding, 90% of my funding is private through foundations
yeah.
and corporations and our friends and galas that we have and golf tournaments that I put together and the friend
That's
who
great.
understands what we're doing. And together we put together a budget that we spend on these kids.
Yeah,
Basically,
let's come back to the your superpower for a minute. You talked about your ability to build and organize a team, and that is a great superpower, and your ability to communicate. Can you think of a time when you used your team to have a successful outcome, a specific instance, maybe a specific young man or young woman that you supported through a difficult time where that ability to lead a team in the midst of a challenging situation came into play? Can you think of an example?
sure, there are many. But I will share the story of Luis Concepcion, who's a young man that came to me at 16 years old, charged with a mugging of somebody in the Lower East Side. No record prior to that, but he was involved in dealing drugs. He lived with some druggy parents that he wasn't really happy with. Never had a relationship that led to kind of what happened to this kid. So this young man gets arrested and charged with this crime. I get a phone call after he was arrested and intervened and got him released and took him on under my supervision for a while. It was a serious case where he yoked somebody from the back and took some money. So he was facing 7 years in prison, indicted in front of a real tough judge. And in time, this kid started kind of coming around at my center. He lived at my center at that point, as many do. And I saw this kid take initiative off the street, worked really hard in education, was able to get his high school diploma while the case was pending. We then entered a plea. I convinced the judge that obviously wasn't a case we would go to trial on. So I wanted to work out a plea. In those days, we're talking 25 years ago, in those days, it was prison mostly on this kind of charges, and that's what they wanted. I was dealing with a judge who knew my work and knew what I was doing. And Judge Felicia Shea, who was an amazing judge. So this judge witnessed. So I appear in court every 20 or 25 days or every 30 days with this kid with a letter informing the court to the point that they said, all right, Angel, we'll take a plea. We'll allow a plea to be entered, but it's not conditional. This plea, maybe he can stay out of jail, maybe not. We'll assess it as we go. So not having a lot of choices, and I taken a lot of those kind of pleas, and I understood exactly where this kid went, and he did too. So we took this plea, and we deferred it. It was a year later when he finally got to the other side, and the judge, because he was under the age of 18, my negotiations was with the Supreme Court judge, not the prosecutor. And the judge turned to me and said, "Look, Angel, I've seen the transition of this kid in front of me. So I will certainly allow the plea. And if he does the right things for the next year, I will adjudicate him a youthful offender and he'll have no criminal record." And that's what happened. So this kid gets adjudicated. He already has, in my community, a 2-year-old child with him, with no mother, a little girl. So he says to me at a point, once he's on probation, like maybe 8 months into probation, that he wanted to maybe go into the armed forces and help his kid. So I go, "Kid, go take the test." He went to the Marines and took the, and the Marine recruiter called me. He said, "Angel, I understand you're working with this kid. He's under your supervision. He scored high. I want him. I want him." So I said, "Are you willing to come to court and talk to the judge? Because he's on probation." That takes me into a whole different perspective. So the guy said, "I can't really come to court." So I now go to probation and say, "Look, guys, this is the story. You guys know how long this has happened. You know where this kid has been. I need his probation to be terminated so he could be inducted into the Marine Corps." Probation said, "Angel, we respect your work, but it's a violent crime. It's too soon. We can't do it." So, of course, in how I work with my superpowers, I go directly to the judge that sentenced the boy and I stand in front of her rail. She goes, "Angel, can I help you? Come on up to the bench." I go up to the bench and I put it on her plate. She goes, "Again, Angel, I saw this kid transition in front of me. Let me do a checkup on him. And if it's correct, I'll do it." Within 2 weeks, this young man's probation was terminated and this kid was inducted into the Marine Corps. I went to Quantico, Virginia to put honors on him upon his request because his dad wasn't connected to him. I will tell you all that this kid went into the Marine Corps to do 4 years. He did 20. He fought for this country. He went to Iraq 4 times. One of the biggest issue with this boy, I call him a boy, with this young man who's 42 today, was that with the YO, he wasn't sure that he could qualify to become an officer of the military. And so we had that conversation. And I said, "Kid, you've been a Marine for 4 years. You can bodyguard the president. Apply." He did. And to be very honest, he was discriminated against and did not make it. And we had another discussion. Do I challenge it and reapply? We agreed that he should, and he became a captain. So the story is that this young man today, one of my proudest moments was to go out west to his ceremony of retirement, where his flag was folded and presented to his wife. He came very close to having that same flag put over his box, I hate to say, because he was in Iraq 4 times as a captain and
Yeah.
he had some very serious calls. So that's the kind of work. And there are many scenarios of that kind that we have on kids like this who've gone that extra yard, not only took that opportunity for themselves, but in this case, this kid has protected this country in ways
Yeah.
that today he's retired. I would also tell you that the kind of work that we do, I was in contact with this kid for all those 4 years weekly. And I was in contact with the same young man for 20 years weekly, including when he was in Iraq, he would call
Yeah.
me on his iPhone. And
Yeah. That's great.
and today he's been retired now 3 years and he's still in contact with me every week. He just started a firm trying to help a financial firm, trying to help other military young people that come out lost with nothing.
Yeah.
So that's an amazing. So that's one scenario
That's a
of
great,
thousands
great
that we
story.
have that kind of.
That's That's fantastic. I want what you're talking about in terms of building a team and collaborating in the community. You have an ability to build a team-like relationship with people who might otherwise be seen as adversaries, maybe with district attorneys and prosecutors. Even the judge might be viewed as someone who's adversarial to you. And of course, you have the people who are working on your team more directly, the other advisors and the people that are social workers or whatever titles you may give them. But it seems to me that part of your ability is to collaborate across these uh, uh, boundaries that are traditionally adversarial. Tell us how you would coach someone to do the same thing, to build those bridges across adversarial modes.
Well, this organization is a model program. It started out as that, a small community base, and like I said, I expanded to Harlem, and I actually have taken a mission after that to take on Brooklyn and the Bronx, and we are literally representing young people in those boroughs as well today, which is something very different. Of course, I don't have a base there yet because that requires a very serious funding perspective that I need to put in place, which is something else. But So this is a model that's out there for anybody. As a matter of fact, of course, I have the model, and it's been copywritten so that I could take it into other cities and other communities that may be interested in doing something like this. And it's about locating leaders and people who are seriously interested, because you have to be interested in criminal justice. It's not an easy place to be, not easy work, as you say. Negotiating with prosecutors who have one mentality, some judges too. And I'm happy to say that through the years that we've been here, we've been able to open up the minds of some of these prosecutors to look at cases differently. Even defense counsel. I remember once working with this older gentleman who said to me, Angel, before I worked with you, I never took a plea on a case. I either went to trial or took a plea, went to jail. I never put a program in place. And, I'm 75 years old and I feel like I'm learning something today. So again, that's the difference. And those are the issues that go on in our system. So, of course, I have an office in the criminal justice system at 100 Center Street, which gives us a connection and easier for my what I call court advocates to walk into courtrooms, to walk into the DA's office, to walk to the Department of Probation to figure out what's going on or to deal with a referral. Everybody refers from different sites. Even prosecutors refer kids to us these days, which is traditionally not heard of.
Yeah.
Which means that I give credit to the DA's office in that they're making some changes, and I'm very pleased and happy that they're making some changes in our city, certainly that are very useful. I think that sealing the records for marijuana, it's a big deal. I had a young man who went to college, got himself a degree and was able to get a job on Wall Street. Of course, he was a black young man, and of course, the fact that we're on Wall Street, the fact that we have a degree, doesn't change who we are. And sadly, this kid went now to the girlfriend's house to find that there was a kid there in our bed, and that led to a situation where he didn't deal with the kid, but he took our phone because you know how kids are, want to see what's in your phone. She calls the cops, gets him arrested. This kid lost a job on Wall Street behind that. Of course, we were able to get his case sealed and taken care of, but the job was lost. He today has another job on Wall Street, which we're pleased. But these are the issues that our young people suffer, and our counselors are very much on top of that. Like I said, I look for
Yeah.
leaders and I try to find leaders. And I've always said to people, many people who we engage, I get involved in a case and a lot of different people pop up sometimes. And sometimes are people from other organizations who have an interest and are interested in criminal justice and what we do and how we flow through a courtroom. And again, my funders, if they want to know and see what I do, I bring them to a courtroom. You want to know why this judge is giving
Sure.
me an opportunity with the kid? Ask the judge; he will tell you. And for them to see the kind of care and concern and how the counselors are super important because they're on the record on every
Yeah.
case. And what differs us from a lot of other programs is that it's not just a free ride. I've put kids back in jail when things were out of control on cases that I was committed. And of course,
Yeah.
I might have gotten them back out later again once they understand. And
Right.
and that's
Gives
super
them a little
important.
new perspective.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't, again, and that was a premise that I kind of used and was involved through the years. It's not one that I use today because I do not believe that Rikers Island is a safe place for any kid to go.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
that today cannot exist, and sad.
Yeah.
And some of our detention centers, which are also in jeopardy, and
Yeah.
I don't need to tell the public what's happening in terms of Rikers and our kids, and the
Right.
kind of
Right.
money that we're now spending on building community jails, which is
Yeah.
another dialogue.
Well, Angel, I know you've got an extremely busy day, and we can't keep you here all day, but I'm incredibly grateful that you have taken the time to be with us today. And I'll be sure to put some links in the show notes in the article I write so that people can track you down and connect with you. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today, and we wish you every success in the great work you're doing to help so many young people.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate that, and I hope the public, looks at these pieces. And again, it's not just about us, but there are a lot of organizations that are doing good work, and our young people in our city need support.
Alrighty, let's do some good. Thank you for tuning in to the Superpowers for Good show. Twice each week, we host changemakers who share their impact, insights, and superpowers. Don't miss another episode. Subscribe today at superpowersforgood.com. That's superpowers, good.com. Be super empowered. Get your copy of the book, Superpowers for Good, as an ebook, audiobook, paperback, or hardcover edition via your favorite online retailer. Interested in having me speak to your company, organization, or association? Visit devinthorpe.com. Then let's talk. Now, keep using your superpowers for good. Together, we can reverse climate change, improve global health, and eradicate poverty.